I want to introduce you to our next speaker, Sammy Ball, who is a PhD candidate in University College Cork. And her research focuses on wild mammals, like Irish hares, in a rather unusual environment at airports. So let's hear more from Sammy. Take it away.
Hi, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining this evening at Pint of Science. I hope a few of you have a pint in front of you. I have my sparkling water in a whiskey glass to make it a bit more fancier, set the pub setting a little bit. But today I'm going to talk to you about my PhD research with the University College Cork and Dublin Airport. And I look at mammals in airfield environments. So just to kind of start off, how I came about working in this area is actually because of this animal here. The picture you've just seen a couple of shots of, the Irish hare. So during my undergrad research back in 2015, we had to pick something to study. And instead of picking my study animal based on it being a charismatic species, or instead of it being a beautiful species, which the Irish hare is, I've actually always been interested in the stuff that lives inside these beautiful charismatic animals, so parasites. The thing about working with parasites is that you need carcasses to be able to have a little bit of a route around to be able to see what's living inside them. The Irish hare doesn't really get involved in many car accidents and the likes, so you don't see them out. That makes it sound like they're driving the cars. They're not. They don't really get involved in many strike events. You don't find many carcasses out on the roads and the likes. But one place in the country that did have a supply of hare carcasses happened to be somewhere that you wouldn't really think, and it was Dublin Airport. So I moved away from working with the parasites, and it got me thinking this work that I did get to do, that you know, why are the hares in Dublin Airport? Why are they getting hit or struck by aircraft? And so from here, I decided that I was going to focus my PhD research on basically looking at this and trying to figure it out of why are they there, why are they getting struck, and what can we do to try and prevent these strikes. Now, I have ended up doing a PhD depending on wildlife and aircraft movements during a pandemic, during one of the only times that aircraft have essentially been grounded. Such is life, and there's a bit of a silver lining to it, as it's actually giving us increased runway access and the likes, because it's pretty hard to go up and down a runway when there's aircraft landing every 30 to 60 seconds, as there happens to be in Dublin. So just actually because I've thrown away around the word a few times now, so what actually is a strike event? So when an animal, be this a mammal, a bird, a reptile, as happens in some countries, particularly in the States, when one of these animals enters either directly into the active runway or into an aircraft's flight path, it causes the opportunity for a collision between the animal and the aircraft. And this is what is known as a strike event. Now, I'm going to try and share a little video for you here. If it's going to. No, it's not coming up with that, I'm afraid. It was just, so it was a hare running in front of, across the runway anyway, at Dublin. So why are there mammals at these airports? So a lot of us have been on airplanes, not the last year or so, but particularly here in Ireland, when you're on an aircraft and you look out, you might notice that either side of the runway, there's quite tall, lush vegetation, and this can be really attractive to wildlife. So these grassland areas in airport environments can be really productive, so they can attract things like mammals, they can attract things like birds, as there's plenty of food and shelter. Also, airports tend to be either in heavily farmed areas or in urban environments. So essentially airports create a little bit of semi-wild habitat for them to live in. And so often wildlife are attracted to airports. And this can be problematic. So When animals enter into an active runway, they can cause disruptions to airfield operations, be this causing delays, or pilots might abandon maneuvers such as takeoff or landing maneuvers, and this can cause problems. As well as this, if a strike event actually does occur, runways need to be closed off to be cleaned. And worst case scenario, there can be damage inflicted onto an aircraft due to a strike event. Unfortunately, a few people have lost their lives over the years due to strike events with mammals. And I mean, their presence there for this reason of inflicting damage and causing incidences and accidents, it's a cause for concern for both passengers and personnel working in the airfields. So my research focuses on mammal strikes. There's quite a bit of research in bird strikes, but very, very little has gone into mammals. And I'm not really sure of the reason. About 10%, 3 to 10% of strike events with aircraft do occur with mammals. And due to their size and their diversity, they can cause huge issues for aircraft and for airports. And so as part of my kind of initial PhD research, I did a review, basically looking at mammals at airports and mammal strikes at airports to see what kind of mammals were involved and where they were involved in these strike events, to basically see if this was a phenomenon that only happened here in Dublin and in Ireland, because the Irish Hare loves airfield environments here, or to see if this was actually more relevant on a global scale. And indeed, it is. Basically, I've identified 40 mammal families that were struck by aircraft. Now, when I say family, it's different to a species. It's say when you have a group of animals that are similarly related to each other. So for example, your rabbits and your hares, the photos we saw earlier, they are one family. And then another, for example, would be like your dog-like carnivores. So that's your pet dog, your fox, your coyote, your wolf. All of those sorts of things. So it was quite a diverse array of animals and hundreds of species. And so this next slide there demonstrates these are some of the animals that were identified as being struck. So we have our little hare, but we had everything all the way up to a giraffe. There was a strike event with a giraffe in Botswana, everything in between. So things like hyenas, kangaroos, sloths, all the way down to rats, mice, and teeny tiny little voles, which are small little animals about yay big, would fit in the size of your palm happily enough. And it goes to show that, so mammal strikes are something that aren't really researched that much, but there's a huge diversity of mammals. When I say mammals, it's not just the little hares or the little rabbits that might be causing an issue. It's everything up to a giraffe, it's everything up to a wolf or something very large and very substantial, which can inflict damage. And this diversity, and mammals are so diverse. I mean, we have most of these are terrestrial, but we also have our airborne mammals, which are bat species. And it goes to show that it's really important to know which species are inhabiting your airfield environment in order to be able to tailor your mitigation measures and your airport management methods. And so looking at where mammals were actually struck, we found them identified in every continent in the world, bar Antarctica. There's not very many mammals down there, and there's certainly not very many aircraft. So there were no confirmed cases there. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but we didn't find them. But 47 countries globally, and I don't think that this is an exhaustive list. This was the countries that we could identify from the literature and from available data. But it goes to show that this research that we're doing in Dublin is actually relevant on a global scale. And so to bring it back here to Ireland a little bit, as I mentioned in the beginning, there's this population of the Irish hare residing at Dublin Airport. And the Irish hare, it's endemic to Ireland, and it's a protected species, and we want to look after it. But for some reason, well, it's very attractive habitat for them. They're residing at the airfield in Dublin Airport, and since 1997, when the first strike event was recorded, there's been about a 14% increase annually in these strike events. And so them being a protected species, and also to try and increase safety and reduce disruptions to airline operations and the likes, we are studying the population of hares at the airfield to try and mitigate the strikes and to manage them in a sustainable way. So first and foremost, the first thing that you need to do is kind of figure out how many hares you've got. So for this, you may remember I mentioned being able to get access to the runway. So we've been going up and down the runway and we've been counting the hares that we see at night, and then basically modeling the size of the population based on trigonometry, which was something when I was in school that I thought that I would never need to use again, but here we are, and I use it on a daily basis. So we modeled the size of the population